On a warm, bright afternoon, inside a bustling neighborhood market, a tiny girl with dust on her cheeks and hunger in her eyes reached trembling fingers toward a metal pot of warm milk. She dipped a spoon, just one spoon, and before she could even lift it to her lips, a furious store owner grabbed her wrist and dragged her outside. The girl stumbled, the spoon clattering to the ground, milk splashing on her bare feet as people stopped, stared, judged, and whispered. Cars honked in the distance, the sun glared down, and the world felt like it had turned against a child who simply wanted to quiet the ache in her stomach. And while the harsh voice of accusation filled the air, no one stopped to ask why she was hungry in the first place. No one, except the man who stepped out of a black car at that very moment, his eyes landing on the terrified child. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kind Heart's Corner right now. It truly helps spread stories that matter. The girl's name was Ariane, small for her 9 years, but with eyes that revealed a depth of suffering no child should carry. She had been wandering the town since morning, her stomach twisting, her throat dry, her little hands clutching nothing but a threadbare cloth she once used as a blanket. Her mother had fallen severely ill weeks ago, unable to work at the laundry shop where she earned enough to feed them. Their landlord had thrown them out when the rent fell behind, leaving them to survive in abandoned corners, half-built houses, and whatever kindness the day might offer. But on this day, there had been no kindness, only hunger. The furious shopkeeper, Mr. Harrod, dragged Ariane by her arm toward the street, scolding her loudly, making an example of her as the crowd watched. He pushed her hard enough that she landed on the ground, her knees scraping against the pavement. Her breath hitched, pain shot through her legs, and for a moment she felt too weak to move. She whispered apologies no one cared to hear, tiny words swallowed by the noise of the market. People clicked their tongues, some recording, some shaking their heads, none stepping forward. She curled into herself, wishing she could disappear, wishing hunger didn't humiliate her so brutally. That was the moment Evan Marcel, the quiet millionaire known for rarely interacting with the public, closed his car door and walked toward the commotion. Evan had built a chain of nutrition centers and orphanage funding foundations across the country, but he never sought attention. He preferred to observe from a distance, to help without applause. He had planned only to pass through the market to buy fresh supplies for a donation event. But when he saw a child on the ground, trembling, with a crowd forming around her like a ring of silent judgment, something deep inside him tightened. The sunlight reflected against her wet eyelashes as she tried to wipe her face with shaking hands, and that single moment had enough weight to stop the world around him. The store owner's voice rose louder as he complained about thieves, pointing at Ariane as if she were a danger rather than a starving child. Ariane's small shoulders shook harder, and she stared at the ground, too ashamed and scared to lift her head. Evan stepped closer, his gaze sweeping the nearby faces that glowed with disapproval instead of empathy. He saw how quickly people condemned innocence, how easily a frightened child became an outcast simply for wanting a taste of survival. Without hesitation, he walked to her, crouched so he was at her eye level, and lifted her gently by the arm with a softness the day had denied her until then. Ariane could hardly stand, her legs trembling, so Evan steadied her. Her heartbeat fluttered, her breath still uneven. The heat of the day wrapped around them, but Evan's presence felt like shade, calm and steady. He reached into his pocket, not for a reprimand, not for formality, but for reassurance, and offered her a small bottle of water he always kept on hand. Ariane hesitated as if expecting another harsh reaction, but when he nodded softly, she took it and drank with slow, careful sips. For the first time in hours, she felt something other than fear. She felt seen. Evan turned his attention to the store owner, who was still fuming. Instead of raising his voice, Evan listened. He let the man speak until the anger ran thin, until the noise became unnecessary. Then he calmly paid for the milk, placed a generous amount on the counter, and asked the shopkeeper to reflect for a moment, because compassion, once lost, stains the soul more than any stolen spoon ever could. The onlookers grew silent, realizing they had been watching cruelty instead of stepping forward with help. Shame flickered in more than a few faces. The afternoon sun softened as Ivan guided Ariane out of the center of attention and settled her on a cool cement bench under the shade of an old tree near the market entrance. Birds hopped around the branches, and the leaves swayed lightly in the breeze. Ariane sat with her hands clasped tightly, unsure if she was allowed to relax. Her clothes were worn out, patched unevenly, and her sandals were nearly broken. She felt so small sitting beside a man whose confidence radiated from the calmness in his posture. But Evan didn't rush, didn't ask intrusive questions. He sat quietly for a moment, giving her time to breathe freely. As minutes passed, Ariane found the courage to share her struggle. Her voice trembled, but each word carried the weight of her hardship. She spoke of her mother, Morella, who was too weak to leave their temporary shelter, how they had been skipping meals, how the world had grown harsher with each passing day, and how she had only wanted a spoonful of milk to keep her strength long enough to return to her mother with whatever hope she could muster. Her story unfolded like a fragile thread of survival woven through adversity. Ivan listened without blinking, his chest tightening. He had seen poverty before, but something about this child, her quiet resilience, her attempts to protect her mother despite her age, hit him deeply. He remembered his own childhood, raised by a single mother who had struggled to feed him. He remembered the days he felt invisible, the days he vowed he would grow up and become someone who never turned away from pain he could prevent. And now, here she was, another child holding the same silent plea he once held. He promised to take her home, not just to drop her off, but to see her mother himself and ensure they had support. Ariane blinked, tears forming again. Not from fear this time, but an unfamiliar sense of relief. She climbed into his car carefully, as though stepping into a place that didn't belong to someone like her. But Evan reassured her with a gentle nod. The car moved slowly through the bright streets, sun catching the windows, and Ariane watched the world pass by while holding her threadbare cloth in her lap with both hands. For the first time in many days, she felt the possibility of safety. When they reached the half-constructed building she and her mother had been using as shelter, Evan stepped out first, helping Ariane down. The building's structure cast crooked shadows, but daylight still seeped through broken openings. Morella lay on a thin mat, coughing weakly, her face pale, her lips dry. When she saw Ariane enter, she smiled faintly, though worry clouded her expression when she noticed the stranger behind her. Evan introduced himself with humility, explaining that Ariane had been frightened and in trouble earlier but was now safe. Morella tried to sit up, but dizziness overtook her. Evan knelt beside her, offering water and quietly assessing her condition with genuine concern. He soon understood that Morella's health had deteriorated from untreated infection, dehydration, and exhaustion. Without thinking twice, Evan arranged immediate transportation to a nearby clinic he personally funded. Nurses dressed in light uniforms greeted them warmly, guiding Morella into care as Ariane clung to her mother's hand. The clinic's bright hallways, filled with daylight filtering through wide windows, felt like stepping into another world, one where safety was real. Over the next days, Morella received treatments, nourishment, and rest. Ariane stayed by her side, gradually learning to smile again, her cheeks filling out slightly as she regained strength with proper meals. Evan visited every day, sometimes bringing books for Ariane, sometimes meals, sometimes simply staying long enough to show that they were not alone. His presence became a constant in their healing, not as a hero, but as someone who believed that every story deserved a turning point. Once Morella regained enough strength to walk without assistance, Evan helped them relocate to a warm, sunlit rehabilitation home his foundation supported. The rooms were simple but safe, the beds comfortable, the environment nurturing. Ariane's laughter, once hidden behind fear, began to echo lightly through the hallways. Morella found work managing supplies at the home, and Ariane enrolled in a small school nearby, where she was given new notebooks, clean uniforms, and a chance to dream again. Weeks later, on a crisp morning filled with golden sunlight, Ariane stood outside their new home holding a glass of milk, not stolen, not begged for, but freely given. She thought back to the moment she had been thrown out of the store, the moment she thought the world had given up on her. But it had also been the moment her life shifted forever, because someone chose kindness when judgment was easier. As Ariane and her mother prepared for the next chapter of their lives, Evan visited them once more. He watched Ariane skip across the courtyard to show him a drawing she had made, a drawing of a bright day, a big tree, and a man helping a little girl stand. Evan's eyes softened, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had not only changed their lives, they had changed something in him too. They reminded him why he began his mission in the first place: to rewrite stories that had been heading toward tragedy. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kind Heart's Corner so more people can feel inspired and reminded of the power of compassion. Special request: comment, "Kindness lives here." If you believe every small act of goodness can save someone's world,